Hi everyone. Today is Wednesday, January the 19th, 2022. No, I was going to say 2021, but no, it's already 2022. Today I want to review a few books. I'll see how many I can get to during this charge time. But I had a chance during the Christmas break to read quite a few books by Jim Rickards and several other authors. But today I want to review Jim Rickards' first book in a series of four, sort of the series of the Four Men of the Apocalypse. And this first one is called Currency Wars, and it was written / released in 2011. So I know it's 11 years later. Nevertheless, I feel like this book and the events that were predicted or forecasted in this book, Currency Wars, and the second book, The Death of Money, because it's Currency Wars, The Death of Money, Road to Ruin, and Aftermath are the four. And then his other books are The New Case for Gold, which I've already reviewed, and Road to Ruin and Aftermath. New Case for Gold and The New Great Depression, which is outside of that set of four, which I've also reviewed. And this one called The Big Drop. And I may or may not review this one because it's actually not a book that was, I shouldn't say officially published. It was a book that was distributed to his investment circle. And so it's not something that you can just go and order off of Amazon brand new. If you can get it through a secondary source, you can. And so I'm tempted to not review a book that cannot be bought. But nevertheless, I might just do it because there are incredibly valuable lessons in The Big Drop as well. But anyways, with that preamble, let me get to the precious gems of his in Currency Wars. So, first of all, okay, the book is also beautifully written in his usual lyrical, very descriptive, poetic style. There's a scene he describes where, when he goes to this top secret sort of a base that just listening to it. It it sort of transports you to a world of intrigue and mystery and spies and CIA and all that cool stuff, But anyways, his style of writing is is one that really transports you, and I consistently appreciate and enjoy that aspect of his writing. Apart from that, oh yeah, and in that sort of scene, he describes, and again, I call it scene because it's almost now those words have become a scene in my brain of the tables that he said was set in hexagonal shape, and there was white cell and black cell and red cell and blue cell, all these different cells that were doing currency war game with each other. And he describes this taking place, I think, in 08 or 09. Interestingly, this game was conducted kind of a little bit before the Bitcoin white paper release and the Bitcoin release. So I actually wonder how much of it is linked or connected in that sense, because he does talk about a different sort of a preamble to this that was done in Omaha, Nebraska, which interestingly is where I think, isn't Warren Buffett from that place? But anyways, who knows? Tinfoil hat, and take it off. So I don't know. That the timing of that currency war game simulation was very interesting. And he describes this in the second chapter. Further on in the book, he describes, again, something that I really appreciate, the fact that he gets quite numerical in his definitions, or rather I should say numerical, quite quantitative in his definitions of things. And he kind of posits how starkly opposed real world is from these kinds of standard economics definitions and stuff that is put out there, and is kind of those kind of formulae are what undergird every basis that any professional economist makes their sort of guesstimations on, and he outlines how counter to reality those things are actually. For example, he talks about how and oh my goodness, there's such wealth in this book. But let me go back to the first example about how he distinguishes that. So he talks about the efficient market hypothesis and the normal distribution of risk. Now, what is the efficient markets hypothesis? It's that, markets are generally efficient. You cannot beat the market. What some good news or bad news or whatever is already priced in, so you can't really game the market, etc. However, we have seen examples of where insiders, famous official insiders, they get away with all sorts of things with no consequence. And so in that sense, it's like, well, how efficient is a market really? And he also talks about how it's not so much the efficient market hypothesis, but more that complexity theory and behavioral economics is what really, if you understand those two concepts, that's really a better framework to understand the market as opposed to the efficient markets hypothesis. And I will describe what those two are as what he describes them. And also he talks about the normal distribution of risk, which we all know that the normal distribution of risk is not actually what happens in the real world. And he describes this sort of fat tail model of risk. And I think the biggest value I think that he brings in to these subjects is he brings a very sort of almost physics-like mindset to the field of economics, which I think is far lacking and very much needed. So he talks. So let me tell you about complexity theory. Yeah, he says. So the four things about complexity theory is that it's not top down, but it's something that emerges based on individual interactions. It's a system where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, which if you think about it in terms of individual variables in the market, and if you see say a price of a certain stock going down, or say a market suddenly collapsing somewhere, and you go, whoa, why are these really good companies being sold? Why are these going down? Why are low risk assets like safe haven assets like gold going down when that risky thing is going down, or that bond market is breaking? But if you think about it in terms of this emergent property of the whole being greater than the parts, you understand that, in order to meet the margin call for that, they have to sell this. And this one's more liquid and has a market, and that one is done. And that's why this one went down. And if you think about it in those terms, you really get it. The third point was exponential, and the fourth point was they're subject to catastrophic failure. And that this exponential bit, he goes into sort of more in terms of his critique of the value at risk model, because the value at risk model is something we all learn in finance, that if you have a hedge, then why is it even called a hedge, right? Because it's hedging, it's containing your risk, and in that sense a hedge is supposed to protect your position in something else. However, when you consider that, and you're always considering these positions of risk as a net position, okay, my net position in this is protected by this. However, when you consider a situation of collapse, it's not the net position, it's the gross position that's actually at risk. And because you're depending on a counterparty, and when the counterparty goes bust or needs something else, the whole thing is at risk. And really, that is the base thing that like undergirds the whole currency war dynamic. Also, if you think about the fact that when you are thinking about a currency war, or rather, let me back up a bit. When you're thinking about being diversified and limiting your risk, you may think, okay, I'm diversifying in this defensive industry and industrials and banking and this and that, or you may take the complete diversified basket like the VTSAX, as I've mentioned. J.L. Collins describes in his book The Simple Path to Wealth as well, which is a book I really love, and I think his strategy is spot on. Again, like over there too, he says VTSX and VBTLX. This is J.L. Collins's book, but because it's the whole diversified basket of the entire stock market and the entire bond market, and you just diversify between those two per based on your risk tolerance. However, this is where I'm saying that the currency war undergirds the whole thing. Every single thing, every single position in VTSAX, in any index you have, any stock you have, any paper and electronic asset you have and you hold, is ultimately denominated in the currency that of the place that you're living in. And so if you have a currency debasement situation, it doesn't matter that the stock market went up 50%. If your currency got debased 70% or 100%, or God, 100%, we're done then. But you see where that's really the root of everything. And he discusses those aspects of war, I would say, war strategy. This book is really about war strategy. And so many things in this book are actually happening now, like things that he forecasted in that book at that time. They're actually occurring now. He gives these beautiful quotes too about, the war god's face has become indistinct, and he talks about this this concept of unrestricted warfare, and he talks about how nuclear weapons have been replaced by financial weapons. And I really this thing, this concept of nuclear weapons being replaced by financial weapons, that really led to some thoughts in my mind with regard to what's going on in Kazakhstan today. Kazakhstan. Sorry, you'd say it as a native, I guess. But anyways, I'll say the American way. Kazakhstan. Yes. So. If you think about it in terms of what's going on there right now, that place is quite a bit of a Bitcoin mining capital. It's got a lot of nuclear reserves. So let's think about this in terms of nuclear war being the next currency war, or currency war having substituted nuclear war. If you take nuclear energy, convert it to Bitcoin, or convert it to any sort of energy currency, right? Because ultimately, what is money? A store of value. And he goes a lot more about this concept, the store value concept, in his next book, The Death of Money, because he talks about how store value equals trust, and trust is collapsing, therefore the death of money, right? But that's his next book. But if you think about it in terms of a store of value as a store of energy, and that energy being harnessed and stored in Kazakhstan as nuclear energy being stored in Bitcoin, and the kind of mass, I don't know what word to call it, the issues going on in that country. The fact that it is a nuclear hub, a nuclear energy hub, and the Bitcoin mining hub. And if you think about that and really ponder that in the context of nuclear weapons being transmuted into currency weapons, and when you also think about the fact that they did engage in like these currency war game demo type things in 2008 or 2007, no, 2008, you would really begin to wonder about cryptography and cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin. So I thought that was fascinating. He talks a lot, about a lot of different beautiful concepts. He talks about different, 5 investments that. Well, let me back up a bit before the 5 investments. He talks about a lot of the things that are going on in China, or that were going on in China, that are actually very, very prescient and very. They've all happened actually now, this year and the past year. He talks about some flags to watch out for. One of them, he says, is watch for China starting to devalue their currency again. And he also talks about the first reaction always being inflation, and then the first reaction always being deflation and next inflation, which I do agree with. But anyways, on this thing about watching for China starting to devalue again, if we think about the fact that right now, when the U.S. is increasing its interest rates, or has said they will increase the interest rates, China has actually lowered its interest rate. What does lowering the interest rate mean? It forces, it devalues the currency, first of all. It forces savers into riskier assets, seeking alpha, seeking gain, seeking some sort of yield. And that was a flag that he did say to watch out for. The 5 investments that he suggests in this book, in the Currency Wars book from 2011, is, of course, he always says gold 10%, land 20%, fine art 10%, equities, natural resources, water, energy, precious metals 30%. He says to stay away from sovereign bonds, emerging markets. Oh yeah, why does he say to stay away from emerging markets? Because he gives a lot of examples about how emerging markets get hit the most during the currency wars of all the big boys. And yeah, that's true. So and financials. He says to stay away from those 3, but to lean towards these, again, about 30%. And he in spite of everything that he talks about, currency war wise, he does advocate a 20% position in cash. This is, mind you, this is in his Currency Wars book of 2011. But the currencies that he advocates holding actually are the Canadian dollar, because they have so, even though they have no gold, they have so much natural resource. The Singapore dollar, the euro, interestingly, and he goes into this aspect in the following book, in his book 2, which is The Death of Money, which I'll review next, because he really makes a case for why the euro, which is interesting, because I was like, what, the euro, right? The euro is like a hodgepodge currency. But so I would say I was one of those like critics of the euro. But after listening to his position on why he thinks the euro will might actually even become stronger than the dollar, not quickly, but like a little bit later perhaps, I I would say that his point of view is well worth considering. So yeah, so that's, and apart from that, he also describes he describes Dubai as sort of the next Casablanca, or the current Casablanca, that movie Casablanca. And yeah, he describes it quite poetically, as always. Like his use of words and language and his style of writing is just very beautiful, very almost poetic. So yeah, highly recommend this book, Currency Wars by James Rickards, 2011. And yeah, if you have any thoughts, let me know, and take care. Bye.